Hey guys, welcome to another video. Thanks for tuning into this one. So today, I think this might be a little long. I will try to cut it as short and go straight to the point. But here's the thing. As you go in for your interview, understand that there are important reasons why you are asked a specific question. No matter how friendly or how unfriendly the interviewer may be, you need to remember that everything that is being done on that day has a specific reason. And your goal is to be able to walk out of that room that day feeling somewhat, I would say, level-headed, not too confident and not disappointed. And the hope is that you are able to perform well. And that's why I'm sharing this information with you. I'm going to share my screen here so that you can see this particular document. This is from the IATA and the Aviation Organization. Without boring you with the detail, all right? Here is the thing. Starting with the measuring dimensions, all right? In this case, this document really is tailored for airlines, and with the collaboration from different airlines all over the world, they've come up with this document, which is now approved by the IATA in the pilot aptitude selection process. And some of the things that they assess, all right, they kind of went into detail of how to assess and give ideas on how to structure this assessment and things of that nature. But here are the things that you guys would see some similarities, especially if you've gone through these assessments, whether it's BA, whether it's TUI, whether it's, Aer Lingus, all these airlines out there, right? Especially for the Cadet guys. This also applies to the pilot selection for the actual pilots. I'm assuming you've already gotten your licenses or your ratings. But for example, for basic mental abilities, right? They've tested you guys on those already. Let me go to this one. The other part to this is the composite mental abilities, where you do all this allocation of attention, multitasking, and they make you do all, this assessment on computer. Most of you have done those already. Now, you are getting to the stage where you are being tested on your operational abilities or social interpersonal abilities and personality traits. Let me make sure you guys can see this, because often when I switch screens, I can't see that. Okay, cool. All right, let's start with the operational abilities. It says components are problem solving and decision making, workload management, situation awareness, and management of information. Now, when you go in for these interviews, they tend to ask you questions that would generally test your problem solving skills or your decision making skills, your workload management, and they may ask you questions in the lines of, how have you dealt with workload? How do you prioritize tasks? How would you handle the workload of training? How would you deal with the pressure of a boss, right? Putting the pressure on you to complete the task or to meet a certain goal. Now, the questions may come in various ways or different angles using different words, but you have to understand that at the end of the day, they all are testing for competences. And I think I mentioned that a lot. But here is your part. How do you handle this type of questions? This is where your own ability to understand the question and find ways to answer the question specifically, giving, if you can, experiences that you have applied those competencies and you've successfully, right, used them to your advantage or to achieve a result. Another area to this is the social interpersonal abilities. So for example, your communication skill, your leadership and teamwork skill. And they will ask you questions in the lines of, how have you performed in a team setting in the past? How have you achieved a goal within the team as well? They may ask you how you've led a team. And the questions can kind of go in different ramifications or different facets, right? But the point here is, at the end of the day, if you could listen to the question, you will be able to identify the competency that has been tested. And your goal is then to use these acronyms like STAR, TDOTA, PACE, there's PREP as well. You need to be able to identify those things and answer the question in a structured manner. I always say this, whatever you do, always use examples as well, whether it's aviation related or not, to really make your point clear. Next thing here is personality traits. Professionalism. I think I've covered this in the past. Nobody has to tell you how to dress going in for an interview, how you carry yourself, how you approach other people, whether it's through the way you interact with them, whether it's through the way you interact with the interviewer, whether it's the way you're sitting, whether it's your demeanor, your nonverbal communication cues, all that stuff, right, can still fall under the professionalism aspect, the words you use, right? So how motivated you are, your self-discipline, self-criticism, and this is where they may ask you questions like, how do you handle criticism? How have you handled criticism in the past? How would you give constructive criticism? How would you correct someone, especially, let's say, a captain, if they've done something wrong? How would you correct them? You have to be able to have some form of understanding of how you would correct somebody, especially as a boss or leader, or is somebody that is senior to you. You have to have a way to be able to point out, of course, right? Point out their errors if they made errors or made mistakes, but also how you are able to point them in the right direction. And, we can go into a lot of details on different facets of these questions, but the point here is be human, right? Have some empathy, understand that mistakes happen, but what are the suggestions you bring to the table? What are the options you're bringing to the table for this person to hopefully do the right thing? And then, of course, you can escalate the situation by, depending on the scenario, by doing the right thing. But the point and the bottom line is you never let anything unsafe go by. The goal is always that you do the right thing and you make sure that the team does the right thing. They talk about, stress coping. So they might ask you how you manage workload, how you deal with stress, information load, how you manage workload, how you deal with time pressure. They might ask you how would you deal with the training, right? The workload that you would experience during training. How would you manage your time, or how would you manage the lifestyle of being a pilot? Those are things that you have to have thought about, and you need to think about it from the training aspect. Think about it from the lifestyle of being a pilot. Think about it from how you would correct a team member or a co-worker in those areas, because remember, they can ask questions like, how would you assist a team member that you notice is struggling? Or they might ask you the question, how would you seek help if you're struggling? You have to be able to think, but the key thing is there's no need for you to try to memorize answers. As long as you have practiced, all right, you have practiced using structured approaches to answering questions. So, like I mentioned earlier, STAR, TDODA, all those concepts are things that if you have practiced them, it should come naturally to you, so that when you're answering these questions, you are able to be apt with the information you are passing on. The next thing, testing instruments. All right. And I think I'm going to scroll to number 3 here. The reason why I'm sharing this part is so that you understand how these interviews are structured. Understand that these are not just, your body is trying to get to know you. Yes, they're trying to get to know you and they might be friendly, and that's great. But here's the thing. There's a standard that has been made for everybody to meet. And your goal is to, especially with these cadet programs, is to perform as high as possible. Well, because at the end of the day, for you to have gotten to this stage or made it to this stage, you've done a lot of things right. And trust me, all your colleagues as well, or candidates that are going through this, are generally well ready and prepared for these opportunities. But here's the deal. If you understand what you're up against and you understand the standards that you need to meet, I think you will be motivated to do the work. So, standardized interviews. It says standardized interviews follow a prescribed set of questions and evaluation criteria. They are quite demanding for the test operator, provided that the interviewer applies professional questioning and communication techniques. Standardized interviews can be successful in capturing personality traits and social competencies. And that's where those competencies come in. Then you have the targeted selection. With standardized interviews, this is where you would have a set of questions that is asked, throughout the day, by the interviewer. And the goal is, at the end of the day, they try to find, who are the best candidates that have performed well based on maybe certain metrics, which I'll share with you shortly. Now, with targeted, by the way, just to make sure you guys are saying this, cool. All right. With targeted selection, all right, which is that section there, it says, in a targeted selection system, the interviewer collects job-related behaviors from an applicant's past history. And this is where your resume, and I always say this, if you've gotten to this stage, I'm sure your resume has been pretty well done, but be ready for what you have on that resume. Because if you have experiences, you are likely, which you would have anyway, you are likely to be tested based on the information on that. And they are looking for ways to test your competencies through those experiences. So the best way, all right, to determine someone's behavior or to understand someone's behavior is through their past behavior. Does that make sense? If I want to hire somebody, I don't know the person from Adam. But if I can find out the things they've done in the past and how they've done them and the skills that they possess, then I'm able to make a determination on how qualified they have for the job. This is where your experiences come in. And this is where STAR come in. This is where the TDOTA acronym come in and all this. So the point here is your experience in your resume. Be ready to be able to talk about them and showcase those competencies. I always say this, at the end of the day, they are testing for competencies. And if for any reason you go saying a bunch of words without identifying or answering the competency, you will lose points. I think that is said. The next thing is, it says interviewers are trained to focus their interview skills and selection decisions on standardized interview principles. Performance is rated by the interviewers on defined skills, which would then lead me to my next point. 7.4. This is where you are measured on the skills. Now, understand that the interviewer is not there to like you, right? Understand where I'm going with this. They are not there to say, oh, well, I like that guy because it just seemed like a nice guy. No, that's not the point. At the end of the day, there are some measuring scales that they use. And your goal is, of course, right, to be at the top of that scale. How do you get to the top of the scale? It comes with practice, having a structured approach, identifying the competencies in the question, and making sure you deliver on the information. Because at the end of the day, if you ask a question about leadership and you go in talking about something entirely different, you will lose points. If for any reason you are unable to carry out the task, or they ask you, tell us about the time, right? You need to be able to find a situation in which you applied that competency. That's why they ask you, tell us about the time, or tell us a situation in the past that you did X, Y, and Z. You need to be able to think and find a situation in which you used that skill or that competency so that you can fulfill the task. So with this, we have different scales or measuring scales that they use. All right. They have what they call the percentage or standard values, but it doesn't matter what scale you are given. Some of them maybe have 3 levels to the scale where they'll say, 1 is on below average, 2 is average, 3 is above average. Some may have scales from 1 to 5 where they will say 1 is, bad or poor, and 2 is like almost intermediate. 3 is average, but 2 is below average, 4 is above average, and 5 is like excellent. And then you have the ones that are like 9 scale on a 9 scale point, or 9-point scale, where you have 1 to 3 as kind of below average, 3 to 6 as being average, and 6 to 9 as above average, or 7 to 9 as above average. The point here is the scale doesn't necessarily matter. You don't need to know that information. But it is important for you to realize that everything you are tested on, the competencies, will be measured against a certain level of competency, like how well have you demonstrated that competency. Another measuring scale that it could use is something like this one's here, which let me make sure you guys can see that again. Okay, cool. Where it says unsatisfactory, eligible, satisfactory, qualified, or highly qualified. Again, like I said, it doesn't matter, which scale they're using. We don't care. But your goal is to be able to use the question, answer the question, and hopefully score as high as you can on the point. Now, this is where I always talk about importance of having main points, having supporting points. It is very easy for you to go into an interview and, they might ask you, why is it important for an airplane to fly at high altitude, right? there are some basic principles to that. Is it the fact that you have higher true airspeed? Is it the fact that you save fuel? Is it the fact that you're able to navigate to your point in much more efficient manner? There's so many factors to consider with that type of question. But generally speaking, the first thing that comes to mind for most people could be, just the fact that, you save fuel, right? Because if you're prepared for these interviews, that's generally where your mind is at. But what about passenger comfort? The higher you are, the higher the chances of avoiding turbulence, whether it's mechanical, whether it's the weather-related turbulence. Generally speaking, the higher you are, the better the rides are. Or what about the fact that you're able to avoid weather or just flying in clouds, which also induce turbulence or icing? All these factors, right, are things that you have main points, but then you have supporting points. The other thing to also consider when it comes to these questions is your goal is not to always have one sentence answer. I mean, unless they're asking you a yes or no question, right? But when they ask you a question where you're having to describe, or they're asking you how or why or what are maybe what are the things or what are the qualities or questions like that, you have to have many reasons to back your point. Now, it's best to have much things to say than to not have enough to say. And I know the next thing that might come to mind is, how long should an answer be? Honestly, it depends on the type of question and how much information you know. But I would rather know as much as I can so that I can say as many things as possible until the interviewer says, okay, let's move to the next thing. That is the way I try to approach it. So if you can have the mindset, it will go a long way for you. The last thing, the last thing that I want to cover with you guys on this material are the pilot competencies. And I've covered those in the past, all right? But I just want to highlight to you why it is important to understand these competencies to the core. And I say to the core because this is the source right here, or part of it anyway. This is an example. Under the communication, right? That's the competency. And they have the list of things that you should be able to demonstrate. And the OB stands for observable behaviors. All right. So for example, it says listens actively and demonstrates understanding when receiving information. Those are things you'll be doing on the day of the interview. But you also have to understand things like uses and interprets non-verbal communication in a manner appropriate to the organization and social culture. Things like this are very gray. But this is where I talk about people skills. If you are unable to maintain situational awareness during the interview, you're likely to go off track when they are giving you cues that you probably are saying too much, or you're rambling at this point, or you're wasting time. Those are cues that you need to be able to read in between. And these are things that comes with practice. And this is why I always say, a lot of people, what you don't know can hurt you. That's the truth about it. And that's why I share the things that I share on this channel, so that you are equipped with this information and you can do your own research, right? If you have questions, you can always reach out to me, leave it in the comment section, reach out to me on Instagram, whatever. I will try to provide you with the necessary information that can help you. But the point here is things like that. It says organization and social culture. How do you know what the organizational culture is? This is where your reading comes into play, right? The things you read about the organization, if you know people at the organization, you get to understand the type of people they are, the type of people they like to hire, because every organization does have its own unique qualities that they want in people. Another example is leadership and teamwork. It talks about, how you encourage team participation and open communication. So for example, if I'm going to think about a scenario in the past where I led a team, I want to include these things here, these observable behaviors in my answers as much as I can. So for example, is it considering input from others? And this is why they do, group assessments or group exercises, to be able to see that you can actually take input from others. You can also give input to other people, right? Or give them feedback. And it says it gives and receives feedback constructively. You're not going to give feedback to somebody because even though they've done something incorrectly, you're not going to criticize them and make them feel bad. The goal is to maintain the team morale and hopefully push the team in the desired goal. But that comes with you having the right skill and using the right tone, using the right body language, and being an engaging team member. And I've given examples in the past. I don't know if I have, but I'm just going to show you an example here. If you're in a group exercise, you have your colleague here, and maybe you have another one there, you have another one, around you. How do you engage with them? Do you just look at the paper and just talk to the paper and your colleague is writing in the paper? Or do you look at them and engage with them? Or do you call them by name? Hey, John, this is what I'm trying to do. Or hey, Sophia, this is what I'm trying to do. Or what do you think? That body engagement, which is more of a nonverbal cue, goes a long way. I know I can talk about this all day long. I just wanted to share this information with you. I hope that you do your own research, do your own homework, study hard, and continue to practice. It goes a long way when you practice and you're able to get the result that you want. I wish you guys the best of luck, guys and girls, by the way. I wish you best of luck and success. Don't forget to drop a like on the video. I'd love to see you in the next one.